This is James Arnold Taylor, voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Welcome to a more civilized podcast. This is the podcast you're looking for. You may not go about your business. Stay here, listen, and then move along.
Hey there, Star Wars fans. It's Kyler.
And Chris.
And Ross.
And we're the brand new episode of...
What really trips us up is that you keep saying it's Kyler instead of I'm Kyler. That's what's confusing lately.
We got to keep us on our toes. And that's us. We've got a new episode here for you, and we're excited to talk about it. Ross, you have some regular plain news to talk about.
Star Wars
news.
I
have no such thing.
Okay, I guess we'll move on.
Yeah,
then.
no news, it sounds like.
No news today.
Is the newsiest news that'll ever news.
Stop it. Stop it.
Hey, and you know what? The fans agree with me. I'll have you both know.
I'm disappointed in every single one of you that lent your support to Ross, by the way.
No.
Kelsey.
Believe me,
I'm calling you
it's
out.
a wonderful thing.
I'm calling who else?
This
Mark
binds
and
us all together.
Mark and Steven, I think they were sensible fellows.
Yeah, Steven was on our side.
Christina, you're also wrong. It should just be the news. You're terrible. Anyway, Ross, lay that news on us, big boy.
Take the newsy news away. All right, so to start off, we have a bit of good news for Star Wars movie purists.
Mm-hmm.
A new cut, well, actually, I guess an old cut has been approved of A New Hope. When we say an old cut, we mean the pre-special edition cut. So, the article specifies that George Lucas has approved a new screening of A New Hope. Now, we were just discussing this just a minute ago, and it seems weird that George Lucas is mentioned specifically instead of just the Lucas Company. My theory is that he probably still holds some sort of rights to the originals.
Yeah, so, must be something of that
well,
sort.
And that could be true as well, because even when Disney bought Star Wars, what is it, Fox or whatever, still had the viewing right, or the rights in perpetuity for episode 4.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until just earlier this year or last year, something like that, where Disney finally negotiated those rights away.
Well, because they bought, didn't they?
Yeah, that was probably part of it. But
wait,
so there may be something like that
they
where
bought
Lucas
90%, 95% of Fox's assets.
They basically just didn't buy Fox News.
Yeah, Fox News and a couple other little things like that.
So there may have been some sort of clause tucked away somewhere in George Lucas's original contract that's like, yes, you have final say on this forever.
Something that kept the lawyers busy for a while.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So,
but either way, it was out there.
Well, and is there word on releasing?
So
or
what it was it was a screening, a
it was the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences.
Yeah. So he screened it for them.
They did a screening, double bill with it in Rogue One.
So they they kind of cleaned up the original 70mm stuff, and the only change that was left in there was that they put in A New Hope at the beginning of the which that makes sense. Okay, you want to keep it consistent with the now much larger.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, it was the original theatrical 1977 release, which would be pretty cool. And then in that same article, there was there was a link to the fan site where you can actually go watch the edited thing online.
Yeah.
It's not as high quality,
Yeah, it's not as high quality, but...
Was it in an article, or was it
No,
Caleb
they linked
that was
in
posting
that.
about
No,
it?
they linked in that article, and then Caleb shared it with me. Yep.
Yeah, because that was... Caleb just happened to mention it to us personally, and then this news came out, so I was getting a little confused.
Yeah, no, I saw this literally that morning, and then that afternoon, Caleb was like, hey, there's this thing.
Yeah.
All you darn people in the Facebook group sniping our news out from underneath us.
Next, we have...
How can we be your source of Star Wars news if you're all hunting it out there for us?
Yes. Now, we're just glad that you love Star Wars as much as we do.
Yeah.
Next, we have some terrible news. Star Wars Land, the Disney's Galaxy's Edge, is out of stock on lots and lots of key items that you are going to Star Wars Land for. The article reports that things like kyber crystals are gone, droid parts, and
some other toys, some other plushie, they had there was a Chewbacca that was there that's gone now. They had a Loth cat or something.
Did they mention how long this is going to be an out of the stock thing for?
Disney's not saying.
They're not saying at all.
They don't know.
Because I feel like they kind of should have been prepared for this. They were smart enough to like limit the people going into the park right at the opening. So clearly they knew that it was going to be massive.
Yeah. I'd wager the main problem is that they underestimated how deep people would delve into their wallets to buy multiples of all these things in order to sell them on eBay.
I guess that's
Which is
a possibility.
currently
Because I
occurring.
guarantee you there's people that went in there and it's just like, hey, do you just have any of these still in a box? Let me take 5 of those.
Well, and people have been taking lots of stuff.
Yeah.
Like
And stealing
coasters
stuff from it,
and
yeah.
like any even non-merchandise stuff. Coasters, napkins, all this kind of stuff.
Was there menus too?
Menus have been taken and they're selling for like $40 or $60 a piece on eBay. It's just like, wow.
And see, like,
I kind of want one.
but I understand like people buying multiple kyber crystals. That was my plan going, because they had lots of cool colors, and especially with them interacting differently with the holocrons and things.
Yeah.
Apparently, even crystals of the same color will, like, you get a different cut of them as well, which you don't see beforehand, and it's also a different person when you put it in the holocron. So, I'm sure people are buying lots of multiples for that reason, but that was kind of the point, is to go back and buy more.
Yeah, it's to
so again,
milk
you would
everyone's,
think that,
and apparently it worked.
Yeah.
Worked really well.
So, in true fandom fashion, they still blow away the people making the decisions on stock. So, we'll keep you updated. If this is a much larger developing story, we'll let you know when things come back.
Yep.
Hopefully this is just a temporary, like a week.
Most
we'll
likely,
see.
the next news story we're going to have is, hey, somebody stole the entire Millennium Falcon from Galaxy's Edge. It just disappeared overnight.
That would be amazing. And my hat would be off to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, yeah, I would have to respect it to a certain degree, but at the same time, it's like, come on, Star Wars.
Props to the Disney employees though that are working there. I read through the article a little bit, and one Disney employee who was reporting on this on condition of anonymity, so they don't get their butts fired yesterday.
Yeah.
They basically said, when customers have been complaining to me and asking about it, I play it off and just say, Hondo's late on his shipment. And I'm like, that's fair, because Hondo would screw people over. And props to you for going the extra mile there for the immersion. But still sucks though if you've paid to be there and you used vacation days and you're there and
you don't get your stuff.
Yeah, you don't get your stuff. Oh,
so
can't imagine. So be glad you're waiting, Ross.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, glad we're all waiting, right?
Yep.
Sure.
That's true.
So there have been several articles recently circulating about things that Daisy Ridley may or may not have said.
It's a good thing she's not dealing with the mob. She'd end up at the bottom of a lake.
They're circulating about things she did say, but they're titled with things she did not say.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Very accurate.
So, I'm sure you've seen most of these. The one that's most recently, the one that we have here in the news, is that Rise of Skywalker will feel like a different genre. Yes, she did use those words, but...
Can I read the actual quote? Because the title says, Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker may feel like a different genre, according to Daisy Ridley. Okay. That has me a little worried, right? It's so it's not going to be like a Star Wars film?
It's going to be a murder mystery.
Yeah, So here's what she says. Genre-wise, it's different from the other two, which will become clear when the film comes out. It's quite emotional. There's a different drive than the previous two films, but there's a lot of fun. I really missed John Boyega during the last one, but we're back together, and now Oscar Isaac is part of it. To me, it feels like kids go on an adventure. Well, to me, that seems exactly like what Star Wars is.
Yeah.
Kids going on an adventure, you've got some funny stuff, you've got some emotional stuff, I guess a different drive than the previous two, okay, so there's just some maybe spoilery stuff there for episode 9, but to me, the title, again, still seems pretty misleading, it's a different genre, it's not going to feel like Star Wars, and then she's like, it's going to feel like Star Wars, it's just the motivation for characters is a little different.
Or even, I wonder if it'll be everything is going to be so intense and so dramatic, it'll be more so than anything we've had before. So you get more of a drama feel to it rather than something. I mean, there's lots that could be inserted in there. So,
or perhaps they crash land on a planet where they have to help some hobbits take a ring to Mordor.
Wouldn't that be the same genre? Fantasy?
Ish.
It is. We've had a whole
It would
episode
be
on
space
this.
fantasy. It's slightly different.
It would make the Falcon would make the journey far more easy.
That's why I said they crash landed.
Darn it! But Ray can fix it, mate. Unless they take a Sith infiltrator, they crash it, then they get out the blood blade or whatever.
The motorcycle.
Yeah,
the Sith scooter.
the Sith scooter and ride that sucker into Mordor.
Yeah.
Well, they'd need to. One does not simply force jump into Mordor.
That is true.
They also went to go on to talk about and to kind of redredge up the Rey's parentage again. The quote here on this one is that
I've heard that clapping in between my words makes my argument more valid, so I'm going to try this. Let her be a nobody.
I think I was clapping in sync with your words.
Oh, dang it. Let her be a nobody. Dang it. Now I feel like
No,
that
I
episode
think
of
the
Sponge-
first one was more effective.
I think it's more like that episode of SpongeBob where he's like when he's trapped in rock bottom, you know, he's like, I need to go home.
So the line that Daisy Ridley actually said in her interview was that director J.J. Abrams did say the question is answered. So at the end of the film, you do know what the dealio is.
Keep in mind, people, the answer could still be, should be, and probably is going to be, yeah, she's a nobody. Yeah. She's not some secret descended lineage of X-famous person in Star Wars. It's okay, people. The galaxy does not need to revolve on the axis of Skywalker and Kenobi, all right? Mm-hmm. She can be a nobody.
Well, and I feel like to change that and to make her somebody is just a giant middle finger to the entire last movie. Which
it's so
even if JJ didn't like what Ryan did, just professional courtesy would prevent him from.
And honestly, that's one of the things that I liked most with Ryan Johnson.
Well, and you're not alone in that. That's one of the things that the larger portion of people who don't like Episode 8 are still okay with that.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Oh, yeah, that's not what I'm asking about.
Yeah, it was a wise choice to have her be Rey from nowhere. Mm-hmm. You know, it's excellent choice, and they need to stick with it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm going to repeat like what I said on the Facebook group is that this is probably just we find out why she was sold rather than she was sold by someone that we should know. So we'll see what happens. This topic has been talked to death, community. That's just,
that's not how Star Wars fandom works.
I know, it's not how any fandom works, but still,
what's going to happen is we're going to get this same discussion rehashed right up until Episode 9 releases, and then we're going to have a different side of this same coin, which is complaining about why she isn't a somebody, and how if you actually look at this scene in the right light and squint your eyes, she could be a Skywalker, and that's what it really was, and there's hidden sim, and we'll have another episode to complain all about.
Well, and it's wholly possible that this is what Return of the Jedi had to do with Yoda, is they released Episode 5, and a ton of people went, yeah, Vader's lying, that's nothing, and then the writers went, I guess we better clear that up. Like, we weren't necessarily planning on clearing that up, but now we're going to insert a scene with Yoda that we never planned on having, solely for the purpose of having him say
both Yoda
yes,
and Obi-Wan.
Yeah, having him say, yes, you are Vader. Or Vader's son. Yes, Luke, you are Vader. You have been all along.
Oh no. Yeah, I'm sorry, Chris.
That's gonna be the twist, is Rey finding out that she was born of the Force and she is actually Palpatine's clone. Palpatine was actually a woman before all of that went down.
I would be so sad.
Chris, I will admit, probably some of my favorite bits of fan fiction are the little blurbs that we get from you in these sarcastic parts of the episode.
How dare you accuse me of such black arts?
Are you saying, am I accusing you of treason then, Chris?
I do not fan fiction.
But I mean, what you gave us right there was like a good writing prompt for fan fiction.
No, it wasn't.
No, that was a terrible prompt for badly written fan fiction.
A good prompt for bad fan fiction.
I will allow that it might be a prompt, but I am not encouraging anyone to write that.
That's fine.
I don't encourage people to write fan fiction, period. Fan fiction is like lettuce. Some people really like it. They're all wrong, but they can do what they want.
Fair enough. Anyway, should we get on to the meat of the episode?
Let's do it,
fellas.
Let's get there.
Oh,
so this episode was brought up, I think, on the Facebook group, if I'm not mistaken.
It was.
Which was it Lindsay that brought it up? I can't remember who said it.
No, I think it was.
Whoever you are, you know who you are and what you've done, and we appreciate it.
Looking at this. I'm sorry.
Was
yes,
Mark
we do appreciate it.
Maybe it was Mark.
Maybe?
I don't know. I can't remember. We're all
back and
old.
look.
Sorry, fan.
And, yeah.
No, we'll just let Stephen tell us.
Stephen, our official fact checker, will tell us where we're wrong. So we're talking about lightsabers in video games. Because I think this is after we talked about Jedi Fallen Order, so news came out of that.
And this is the Star Wars community as a whole have been complaining about the lightsaber.
So let's talk about lightsabers that we see in the movies, right? And what they can do, right? So, Episode 1, lightsabers can cut through blast doors. That is no small feat, right? Qui-Gon Jinn shoves his lightsaber into the blast door. Sorry, Episode 1. Qui-Gon shoves his lightsaber into the blast door after it closes.
He starts cutting through it and then just sticks it in and has it start melting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which was very interesting because it for me, when I saw that, I was like, what? No, but the extended universe already confirmed that these things don't give off heat. They just cut. It's weird. I don't know why, but I was like, well, apparently that's not a thing anymore.
Yep. So they do give off
the current
heat.
universe has officially ruled.
Yep. So they can do that. They can cut through other doors. We've seen that before. Lots of places. They can deflect
they
blaster
dice up
bolts.
a B1 quite easily.
Yep. They can cut right through battle droids,
Mm-hmm.
but cannot cut through stormtroopers or clones. They just get gashes in their armor. So you can completely bifurcate a battle droid.
Well, but you can easily behead a Jango Fett.
You can behead a Jango Fett. That is true.
You
Jango
can in fact
Fett-
behead anyone.
So in
Removing limbs is
Yeah.
the forte of.
Yeah, exactly.
I got
lightsaber.
looking at the
Yeah, Dooku loses his head and hands,
yeah.
and
Hand
Obi
for
or
Luke,
arm,
for Anakin.
and then another arm for Anakin,
And
and
some
a
legs.
leg,
Yeah.
and another leg.
So lots of hands, couple of head,
Yep.
but that's really
So
all the
yeah,
real
lightsabers-
limb
difference in lightsabers.
separation seems to be
Lightsabers
pretty
are really
canon.
good at defending the high ground,
They are indeed, but
unless they're wielded by a
only.
Sith.
No, I was gonna say I think it has more to do with the beard.
Yeah, that's true.
Because Maul didn't have a beard, so beard plus high ground equals victory.
Well, but I mean, that leaves all sorts of possibilities open. Is it just that you have to be human? Like, is this a species
could be.
thing?
It could be a human thing because Padme had the high ground in the arena against the
That's true.
Nexu.
The Nexu.
Yeah.
And she won with the high ground. Maybe it's a human
Maybe
trait.
it's a brunette thing. Is Obi-Wan a brunette?
No, he's got
though?
like the reddish
he's
orange.
more auburn.
Yeah.
Okay, so
maybe
so that
it's a
rules that
human
out.
thing.
What are their eye shades? Like, do we?
Obi-Wan has blue eyes. Padme has brown.
Yeah. Okay, so it's not. It must be the human.
It's
thing,
a human thing. It's a
If
human
you're
racial
human and you
factor,
have the high
racial
ground.
feat.
Yeah, it's their racial bonus that
Well,
they have over
exactly.
other races.
She's Nubian. Where's Obi-Wan from?
Oh,
Where's Obi-Wan from? I don't know that off the top of my
Yeah,
head.
I don't either.
should. I'm gonna look that up.
Real quick, it's funny that we mention Jango Fett getting his head popped off real easy by a lightsaber, because as far as the Wikipedia article mentions, Mandalorian armor is supposed to be resistant to slashing and glancing blows
It
from
is.
a lightsaber.
that's just how bad
They
Mace
did catch
Windu
him
is.
in the neck though, where
Yeah.
there is no armor.
It's true.
Pull
So-
the mountain.
Yeah. And there were several things that were actually interesting on the Wikipedia article, because the Praetorian Guard armor is apparently very, very closely related.
Wow.
As far as
Obi-Wan's
function
homeworld
goes.
has the dumbest name ever.
Naturally, It's Star Wars.
Stewjon.
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 Oh, that's right. I remember that. We discussed that once. where
That's
it's
so
just like,
dumb.
yeah,
Okay.
this is my brother, Stewjon Bubba Bo. We named the planet after him.
That's right. I do remember
Hey,
that.
Stewjon, we're gonna name a planet
That's
after
so
you.
dumb. Oh, Chris, good call. His hair color, auburn.
Eh,
Later, white.
You passed,
That's
Chris.
true.
You can stay on the
Later it does go
podcast.
No kidding. Well done.
I mean, I have eyes. Like, I am also the one who said it was brunette for a second there before I went. Oh wait, no.
And see,
but to nail auburn specifically,
I
that
would
was
have
well
said
done.
like a strawberry blonde. Still,
That's fair.
there you
Yeah,
go.
especially in
Anyway.
episode 2. He's
Yeah.
a bit.
Yep.
He's a bit
Anyway.
more.
So what do we know about lightsabers? We know they are supposed to cut through basically everything.
Yeah, they can pretty much cut through everything except other lightsabers. Any like some sort of like electro weapons, so
Yeah.
vibro knives.
The Wikipedia article specified electric-based weapons.
Yes, so they can't
What
cut
about
through those.
is cordite still a thing?
You mean cortosis? It is.
Cortosis. There we go. Thank
Yep.
you.
The
Oh,
new-
it is.
Cordite
yeah,
is
the
an
new
actual
Thrawn
mineral.
books.
Sorry.
The new Thrawn books talk about it.
Which is also where it was originally
And
from. as
they
well, if I remember
shoot,
right.
Yes.
yeah. They in the new canon. I don't know what they did in the old canon, but in the new canon, they essentially mess with the kyber crystal's ability to project its energy.
Yeah.
So when
Yeah.
you get too close to cortosis, it shuts your lightsaber
Yeah,
off.
that's what it did in the
Okay.
original.
Yeah, it's I've heard it more explained as it causes some sort of feedback back into the saber.
But that is what
the
saber.
the
visually,
effect
what would
is-
happen is you whack a wall of this mineral with your lightsaber, and your lightsaber just shuts off.
Yep.
Yeah.
So there's cortosis. There is other energy-based weapons. There was apparently also the hide of an extinct beast. With
Zillo
resist
Beast.
lightsabers, the Zillo
The
Beast.
Zillo Beast, yep.
And there were a couple other. It mentioned just kind of rare metals, random things like that.
So there
We'll
are
never
a few
find out
things...
for sure, but probably Captain Phasma's armor.
Probably. Yeah, I know, right?
yeah, probably.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, Mandalorian
I
iron.
wouldn't think so, actually, because her helmet shattered when he hit her with the electro axe.
Well,
or
it's
whatever.
if you hit it hard
When-
enough repeatedly with the lightsaber, you might batter through it.
Okay.
It's kind of,
Well, and
gotcha.
it specifies that it's supposed to protect from slashing and glancing blows, but piercing, like a stab with the lightsaber, it does not provide protection against.
Okay.
So, but again, yeah, Mandalorian armor, iron, is supposed to be also like that.
Yeah.
Again, Praetorian guards, it was supposed to be similar, slashing and glancing, but not piercing.
But pretty much, I mean, it's your can do everything weapon. I mean, it's a game ender. You have that, you're gonna win. Pretty
Yes.
much is what we see in the movies.
If you have the...
Correct.
Yeah, but that's 9 out of 10 people.
Oh, yeah, sure.
use
But
it.
it's also, so at least in the old books, they made a point of trying to emphasize that it's like, this weapon is basically unwieldable for the plebes.
Yeah.
Because it's just too dangerous. Yeah,
yeah.
you're gonna lop off something by accident, or you're gonna piss off Kylo Ren and get your back hacked open.
Exactly.
Right. So with all that said, people are complaining that not all of that is reflected in games, basically in general.
Sure.
And it's true and fair, I think.
It is. But we're going to talk about several things as to why. So, the first thing I want to talk about is kind of from a game design perspective, why this isn't the case, right? Lightsabers present several unique design challenges that are hard to design around if you stick up with the full lore behind the lightsaber.
Yeah.
So let's back up still just a little bit farther and just talk about games in general and fun. What do we as people find fun?
Ooh.
Just
I can go on with video games.
Sure.
In
Yeah, just
particular,
Killing the entire village. Not just the men, but the women and children, too.
That needs to be a video game.
I just
Slaughter them like
okay.
animals. The video game.
I just want to pause real quick, listener. Remember what Chris and Kyler have just said, because
We're
I'm
gonna
get
come back to
this.
the yes.
Yeah. So right
Okay.
at the very end, probably the last thing I'm going to say addresses this.
Okay.
So I'm gonna hop in here with my favorite little theory of what's fun in video games. This is from Benjamin Yahtzee Croshaw, who you can find on Escapist Magazine doing all sorts of crazy crap.
Yeah. Content warning for those.
Oh yes,
by the way, if you look
absolutely.
them up.
Content warning with anything involving Yahtzee, including his
Yeah.
Twitter feed, anything else, like just be aware. He's very good at cursing. I enjoy it. But
He's an artist, definitely
he
an
is.
artist of cursing. but
He's one of
whoa.
those
And he
people that like
paints with
they're
the-
swearing because swearing is supposed to be cool or adult or whatever, and then they're swearing because you know how to use a swear word effectively.
He's a true artist, and his
he's
medium is
effective.
profanity.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
So yeah, be warned of that. But he a while back he was writing articles for The Escapist that kind of delved into topics he'd covered in his video game reviews, and he outlined what for him was he felt like the best system of judging how well what it is about video games that is engaging. And he had basically like a three-legged stool is how he described it. He's got catharsis, context, and challenge is what he put into it. And so like the
I think those are 3 good pillars.
yeah, so the context here is basically story. We'll work our way through a video game in order to get more of the story.
Yeah.
A well-written story is going to be engaging. Challenge is
challenging
It's
it is.
straightforward. It's like you can have games that are too challenging for some people, that are not enough challenging for other people, but generally speaking, we want some sort of challenge from our video games. We want to feel that we've overcome something, that we've managed something. And
You
then
don't feel like you've earned anything if you don't have
Exactly.
a challenge.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the catharsis is just doing things for the sheer joy of it, just having fun, just having something that
like slaughtering
appeals
people like animals,
can
and
be,
not
yeah,
just
like
the men,
like
but
the
the women
my
and children,
favorite
too.
example of catharsis is the Polis Massa map in Battlefront 2.
Yes,
when you
Chris,
when
you're
you
Darth
are
Maul,
when
and
you
you're
get
in
to
the
be Darth
hallway,
Maul, and you're just
exactly.
racing through the hallways with that double-bladed lightsaber.
and like 40 clones
And
come
you
at
don't,
you.
you don't care if you're cutting down battle droids with the clones. It doesn't matter.
cares?
You're just slaughtering everything, and
It's
you're
so
getting
good.
so many
you
of them
throw
that
that double
extend your time
lightsaber,
for
and
so
it's
long.
just the right width of the entire hall. and you just mow
Yeah.
everybody down.
And it's fun.
It's
There's
so
no
good.
challenge to it whatsoever.
No, none
There's
at
no
all.
context, really.
Nope.
It's just, this is so much
Butchery.
fun. The Just Cause series is made of this. It's literally named Just Cause. Like, it's...
Yeah.
We're going to do this just cause it's like, hey, I've got this grappling hook gun. I'm going to fire at one end at this cow, fire the other one at this plane, and then watch that plane take off, drag that cow behind it. That's hilarious.
Or
That
my
does
favorites
sound
have
awesome,
always
actually.
been they will attach a bunch of the little rocket mine things to something, to people,
Yeah.
to cows, to whatever, and he'll put 3 or 4 of them on, and you can watch him click the thing, and just the cow becomes the rocket. Yep.
It's a good time. So that would be the catharsis. And catharsis can take a lot of different forms. Everybody's going to find something that's gratifying in a different way. Like, things aren't going to be this.
I would say
just as gratifying
Minecraft is
for one person as
primarily
another.
catharsis because you can do. There is no story really in creative Minecraft.
Yeah,
you
but
know?
most people tend to set a challenge for themselves.
Yeah.
You also have the challenge of staying alive while
Sure.
Correct.
fighting.
But then it's.
But there is
But
very
there
little
is that
story. That's
yeah.
for sure.
There's
You make
no
your
story,
own
but
little
it's a lot of
stories.
catharsis in the sense of like, oh, cool. I found catharsis in setting my own goal. and
Catharsis
achieving
would
it.
also be in like the Shadow of Mordor games, where it's like, oh, I've been hunting down this stupid chief, and he keeps getting away, but I finally got him. I beheaded him. He's dead, and hopefully this time he won't come back. And it's just that, oh, I did it. That's the challenge and the catharsis working great together.
Yes. Now, and that is especially in kind of thinking about how to explain this on a simpler level, I find that game design in general is like a finely tuned recipe. Some people will like more of something than another, and that's why they like certain foods over others, that sort of thing. But yes, actually, that's a very good.
I'm going to call you Chef
Well, and
Ross
the
from
idea
now.
too is like you don't necessarily have to be very strong in all of these 3 of these categories, but if you're weak in one, you're going to want to shore it up by being stronger
Correct.
in the others.
Yep.
And
Yep.
Such as, again, like Minecraft with a story, it is, even though you aren't making your own, there's not one set that you're going through, but the other aspects of exploration and everything else
Pay
you're
off
doing.
for whatever your
Or
self-imposed goals are.
the Diablo games, where it's like, okay, you've got some good context, but the context for large chunks of the game, the context is absent. And the challenge is usually not that heavy until you get up pretty high in the game, but there's a lot of catharsis in their kind of Skinner box-esque system that they set up of killing things, picking up loot, getting better and better loot is like, that's pulling you through until the context gets nearer and you go, oh, I'm just about to pay this off. I want to find out what happens next in this story. And then once you get into higher levels where you've already got all the context, you already know the story, then it's mostly the catharsis and the increasing level of challenge pulling you forward.
Well, and also, wrapping up the story, achieving those victories and those things that you've set out. The ones that I came up with just off the top of my head were challenge, of course, was number 1. Suspense is also something that we, as people, find fun and engaging. Story, exploration is another huge one for games. We like to explore and discover.
And I would say that falls under catharsis.
I believe, those 3 are very broad.
It's nice.
Yeah. But it also from when you're designing, there's some little check boxes that you want to go through.
Absolutely.
Challenge,
Well, and
exploration.
catharsis is the broadest of those 3 categories
Yeah.
by a large margin. Like, that's very, very wide ranging.
Yeah. And the final thing that I think would be tough to kind of fit into what his explanation was is choice. We find
That's fair.
we like
In fact,
being
I think
able
he did
to
do a bit choice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Games that let you choose and develop your own personal sort of identity through the story or whatever environment you're in do tend to do great.
Yep.
So
That's very true. I mean, you think about
But let you role play.
Yeah, you think about the success of Minecraft. It's because you are literally defining who you're going to be in this game as you play it. You know,
and I'll tell you when
the different classes in Diablo. So Ross and I and you, Chris, I think also backed Star Citizen.
Yeah, I backed it. I
So
just haven't been following.
Yeah. My wife also has a game package for Star Citizen, but has refused to play because they didn't have female characters. She's like, I'm just not into it until I can play as a girl. I don't want to play as a guy. So there is a lot to say about that choice and having that choice where you've got the identities. Like when she plays Diablo, she's got Diablo 3. She'll only play she wants to play the females, which I thought was a great addition to.
well, and it's not even choice going into as part of it, but also as a result of the game playing. It's like especially RPGs, like are good at this because you spend your points differently than people next to you, giving you a more personalized
part of why
experience.
D&D is so great.
Exactly.
So.
Well, and it's why D&D is basically the father of all modern gaming.
Yep,
But,
it sure is.
and also why RPG elements start popping up in other genres that haven't traditionally had them.
Yep.
But anyway,
we can tell Ross listened to the history portion, or the history bacon.
Well, and that's honestly that's something I've been saying since years. So
I know. I just wanted to plug my my appearance on Bacon Sale,
which was very good, by the way. I did
thank you.
Get through both of those. So I feel like they definitely give you a harder time than what most people will.
They played pretty much exactly like I expected them to.
It's very common,
for
at least
for
first timers.
At
least the ones that I've DM'd, they're always just absolutely nuts.
Yep.
So as far as our discussion today with the lightsaber and game design challenges, the heaviest sticking points are going to be between the principles of challenge and choice. Okay. So first, if a lightsaber was made in a game to be just like all the lore around it says it should be, you wouldn't have any sort of meaningful combat.
Yeah, exactly.
The fun in combat is mostly derived from the challenge, because this is placing you head-to-head with either another player or a computer-controlled AI.
Well, I mean, absolutely, there is something to be said for, like, yeah, I'm just going to pick up these stormtroopers with the Force and play dodgeball with them, like, this is going to be a blast. You can have fun with that, but we all know from experience that wears off rather over time, which is why they start you out with challenge, and you get stronger over time, and then you get to really indulge in the catharsis later. Or in bits, depending on how you level up.
So for example of that, when The Force Unleashed first came out, I got it on the Wii because I make poor decisions.
At the time. I know, I remember, because that was all you had. You didn't have your Xbox yet at the time. But
and so I had it, and I played through it, for the story, doing the regular sort of playing it through as, leveling up, and the challenge levels up with you and all, and it was fun. And then when you beat the game, it says, do you want to play again on a more difficult challenge, or do you want to play through on the regular setting, but keep all of your powers?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, that sounds fun. So going through as like this maxed out character back to those first levels where it was like, oh, hi, yep, a half second of lightning on you, the whole room is dead, okay, cool, move on, And I go through and beat the game again in like a quarter of the time because I'm juiced up,
And that was one thing I thought was interesting that they did in Force Unleashed, even before you get to the New Game Plus, which is that second run through. That first level is actually paced very well with you sort of learning
as Vader.
I'm sorry, I'm actually thinking the first one as
the main guy,
as Starkiller. Yeah,
okay.
Because you walk in, you're in this space station thing, and there's just a bunch of stormtroopers everywhere. But those first several rooms that you go through really aren't a challenge. They're all there just so that you can start to kind of learn the Force powers and play with it a bit. And just as you're kind of getting used to it, and you've kind of figured out, what fun is with these Force powers, then they start giving you a little bit more to. So combat is derived mostly from. The fun of combat is derived from the challenge. Or one thing that makes it very different here in games is that combat in life does not work the way it does in games or movies. This is also where both games and movies are inconsistent with the lore behind the lightsabers, usually. So, a combat section of a movie is interesting because the two combatants are doing things to stop the other person from landing a hit. In games, there is a technical limitation in animation that makes it nearly impossible to consistently recreate a full dynamic fight.
Yeah, sure.
Right? Fights in movies take a while. Because of this maneuvering, this posturing, right? And just because you want to
because it's a dance. Yeah, right. It's a well choreographed dance.
Yeah. Whereas combat in real life is usually only seconds long, right? Usually it even comes down to one exchange, at least as far as like old duels and things. Again, just the only ones that I know of are really fencing. They really didn't last very long.
Well, if you see fight videos on YouTube or something like that, where it's like, oh, these two guys get in a fight. 2, maybe 3 punches and it's over.
Yeah.
And that's like 90% of your fights.
Yeah.
And it's no different with guns. It's like, okay, we start shooting, exactly. You might, there might be some spray and pray and you might get lucky that something misses you, but once something hits, you're down.
Yeah.
Yep, that's it.
Well, and even so, usually in movies, you'll get a lot of like glancing hits. Someone may get, poked in the shoulder or in the side or something like that. Usually that's a might as well be fatal.
Getting hit in the shoulder is far more deadly in real life than it is in movies.
But even like getting someone like glancing you off the ribs, there is still enough like things happening with your core and you trying to move around that is going to kill, and you are going to
tear open.
Yeah, basically in real life, but real life is more deadly than movies.
Yes, that's what
everything in real life is always trying to kill you. Always.
Yep.
So, You do have technical limitations in animation, like we talked about, because there is a certain amount of space on your computer that not only the computer has to be able to access quickly, but also just the physical install itself. It still has to account for all that information, for all those custom animations to come from any particular side. Yes, you do have, and you do commonly see attacks and blocks and things like that will have the player recoil. Like Jedi Outcast and Academy did this really well. But again, they're a very specific case when those things would be. Most of the time what happens is that your character will make an attack and it'll play the certain attack animation. The defender will stand in a defensive posture, but that defensive posture may not actually work against where your attack is coming from, but you still don't do any damage. So what'll happen is the attacker, their animation plays, a lot of times it will pass through the defender's body, even though they did officially get their block. Now, no damage will be taken, because, you know, they want to make it fair enough for the person.
Yeah, because the game has recorded that your block was successful.
Correct.
Sure.
But you can still actually physically see the weapon passing through the person's body. If that were real life, you'd have had an Obi-Wan moment, right? Person should have died, some damage, something should have happened, but it doesn't because it's not good gameplay, right? It was always funny to me in actually Jedi Outcast would do this, because the emitter on the particle emitter on the lightsaber, for if you put your lightsaber in something, you would get sparks, you would get smoke, you would get some things like that. So that would still go off as it passed through a person. But again, you wouldn't be doing any damage to cause it would cause you as a player a little frustration. So, games like Knights of the Old Republic did this better because the combat was far less dynamic.
Yeah.
It's
more
turn-based.
tactical. It's just, here's your instructions, and then the game will play it out.
Well, yeah, and you would fill in, you want to make this attack as opposed to that attack. The other person may or may not defend. They may or may not play an animation to defend. But still, those fights weren't as fun to watch as other things like KOTOR. Jedi Outcast. So, and it's because of those.
That game was leaning heavier on context and catharsis than on.
Correct. So, continuing on, all games featuring lightsabers, with that in mind, would eventually, if you wanted to go the realistic route, they would eventually become down to platformers with maybe some boss fights, depending on your story.
Yeah.
Because things, of course, would happen too quickly, even if you had other lightsaber-wielding combatants. In a situation where your animation passes through them first, you would have to win if you wanted to be that realistic with it. So then just move on. They would not give you any sort of challenge. There would not be any meaningful reason to actually have those combat scenarios. Your game would have to change to puzzles, obstacles, the classic LucasArts jump as far as you can to get to somewhere, some ledge, which is fun. I mean, those sort
but when it's your only source of challenge, it can drive you crazy.
It can. Have you guys heard of Roblox?
Yes, my kids play it all the time.
Yeah,
I don't know what it is.
I have a niece who's also playing it, and then wanted us to play it with her, and so we went into a little bit. Her favorites are just obstacle courses, and so you just have a little 3D avatar, and you're running through an obstacle course that someone else has made for you. They're usually never terribly long. They can be difficult and challenging, but they do get tedious fairly quickly. So yes, you do need a little variety. There is some fun to be had in those environmental puzzles. Those things can be fun, but if you want to play a Jedi, you want to fight as a Jedi.
Yes.
If you want a realistic game, it's not as fun in a gameplay setting. So game balance requires that you handle enemies as quickly as they can handle you also. So if you don't happen to get your animation to slice through the other person first, you're the one that dies almost instantly, and that's not as fun. Right? Now, it should also be noted that it is common in gaming to weight things or to adjust things in favor of the player.
Yeah.
In an AI situation, like a player versus AI situation, I should say. So if you're shooting at someone with a blaster, the area that you have to hit will usually be larger than what they are going to hit on you, right? It's a little bit tougher, and you see it less and less, or they've kind of evened it out a little bit more in modern games, because people have noticed that, like, sometimes it used to be where they would make that target area the full width of the person, like shoulders and legs and everything. So you could hit, between somebody's knees in the middle of open space, and it would still register a hit in older.
Yeah.
That became frustrating, and so they have changed things. Back in the day, those were just the technical limitations you had to deal with. That was all they could do. Now they've done things like where you can actually have those areas just on people's legs, so that a shot between the knees will hit just open air, and you'll have
leave
to
you with
reload
a
it
very
better.
startled NPC.
But also conversely, they have still weighted things for you. I mean, if you were to actually look at where a shot landed on you, in real life, it would probably, take off a piece of your skull. In the game, it may not register because, even though we like to say we like fair games,
We like them fair in our favor.
yes,
We like the appearance of favor.
Exactly.
Of fairness.
Yeah.
I always go to XCOM when thinking about this because you can have two characters standing next to each other. You tell one to attack the other. You see, you have a 95% chance to hit, and you still miss. Which is why people have complained about XCOM a lot, because they're sticking closer to those actual numbers that you see.
One of the great mantras of video game design really is just hide everything you're doing to cheat.
Yep.
Because you're going to nudge their shots slightly closer to the enemy than they would have gone. You're gonna give them a little bit more leeway, and when they really have to hit that button, it's like, I'm running to the edge and I'm gonna jump, and yeah, you actually hit it slightly too late. You should have been off that ledge, but now you're good.
Mm-hmm.
That's why, I think about the old Battlefront games with the auto targeting.
Yep.
It's like you get your targeting cursor kind of close to the enemy, and the game will just take over and account for the lead on them and everything, and you just go.
They call it sticky targeting. Other things, that was one example I wanted to talk about. You have other things like if you walk into a room and you start getting shot at, usually what will happen is the developers have programmed in the AI to miss those first couple of shots to give you a chance to react, to turn around and combat those that are in the room.
If enemies come up from behind you, they usually program them with sounds to let you know someone's coming before you just get shot in the back. Things like that. Not always. It also depends on how deadly their weapons are. If they don't have too deadly of weapons and you can soak up a lot of hits, they don't be as worried about that. But if their hits are particularly deadly, then you're going to have some warning generally before they hit.
Even in the most punishing games, usually you still take a few more hits than they. So a lot of times they get around this by sending multiple people at you at once, so it feels fair. Even though they might all hit you once, and then you die, so you might have 3 or 4 shots before you die, and you get to hit each of them once.
Well, and it's really the same sort of thinking as you get with popular media that I talked about in the Mary Sue episode, where it's like a lot of the goal of popular media is to make your audience is identifying with this character, and you want to make them feel powerful and good and great and wonderful while they're identifying with that character. And video games, that's just ratcheted up to 11. For the majority of video games, at least, the goal is to make the audience feel like badasses.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
Pardon my French.
Well, technical term, right?
Yes.
Technical term. So, does that make sense? Why the lightsaber would be a design challenge a lot of these times? Because to do it actually like you would see in the movies or the way the lore says it should work. Is that clear?
Yep.
Yeah. There's a lot less challenge. You can just flip through anything. I feel like some of that stuff is. I feel like I want to play with that. Like I feel like I could tool something that would still work with getting more realistic, but at the same time, I'm like, no, I can see how difficult that would be.
Yeah.
You would have to have inherently different combat at the very least. Like it's not going to be the kind of combat you're used to. You're going to have to drastically shift some things to give challenge to the player.
So. The gaming industry at large is also kind of playing with this idea, because what I feel you'd have to do is you'd have to actually move it more towards the movie realm of you're doing a lot more to kind of posture someone. There's a lot more blocking and a lot less hitting.
Yeah.
Right? Recently, over the last couple of years, you've had a couple of games come out where it's mostly about facing off with someone. And instead of actually you really moving around and trying to hit things before they hit you, it is more about looking at where their attacks are coming from. So rather than you moving your character around, you're actually telling your character where to defend from. For Honor did this, if you're familiar with those. Mordhau, I think, is what's recent in the...
There was one that
in that, with
PlayStation
that
Plus
genre
had last year that was a lot.
That might have been For Honor.
Annihilation. No, it was something with it. Was anyway.
And so again, that's taking some control away from the player. so that you can have a more realistic fight. It's still kind of being met with middling success as to how much players are actually engaging with that. So it's tough to kind of find the right balance. So the claim that's coming with Jedi Fallen Order that Sabers have always been too weak, I think is also a little bit of a miscategorization. Stormtroopers, to my experience, die in one hit, with exception of Knights of the Old Republic. And even that's only half of an exception, because in those beginning stages when things took more than one hit, you're using vibro blades, and then you move on to tougher enemies that have a reason.
Until side 8 level in the show.
And so, I mean, even that is still not exactly. I can't think of anything. Battlefront, everybody went down pretty quickly. Definitely one hit to lightsabers anyway.
Yeah.
Because I can't think of where that's not the case. Now, the other sticking point...
Yeah, that's true, and that's true in the new Battlefront also. I've played a little bit of it now, and yeah, when you see a lightsaber wielding foe, you better hope you have about 30 of your buddies around you that you can all focus fire down on them where they can't block every shot, because once they get to you,
it's over.
They touch you and you're gone.
And so, I hadn't thought about that one because I don't play Battlefront, but you'll notice they did other things to not overpower those Jedi too much. Mostly in the case of giving you a limited time to play them.
Yeah.
Because if you had even one person as a Jedi on the field, unless you had someone else to engage with him and just not let him move anywhere, the one player is going to rip through the entire enemy team without any problem.
Yeah.
If we're doing Jedi and lightsabers realistically, and you have competitive play, then everybody has to be a Jedi. Otherwise, there's almost nothing anyone can do.
See, and this brings up the story that that I mentioned earlier about a conversation you and I had, Chris, years ago, probably right after we graduated high school or something. I don't know. It was when Star Wars Galaxies was a thing.
Oh yeah, okay.
And they had a couple of different classes, right? Mm-hmm. So you could be like the good guys, and you had a Jedi, or like a rebel soldier, or
a smuggler, because everybody knows how nice those guys are.
Exactly. And then if you're the bad guys, you could be a Sith, or a bounty hunter, or an Imperial officer, or whatever. And quite predictably, almost every single person that played Star Wars Galaxies went Sith or Jedi. Mm-hmm. It was like 99.9% of the population of the game was force-wielding lightsaber people, which meant if you chose to do anything else, you were grossly underpowered compared to your lightsaber-wielding friends. And I remember talking with Chris about this. I don't remember the exact things that we said. A lot of it actually has been covered by Ross here, because I was like, man, it sucks. I can understand that everybody wants to use a lightsaber, because why wouldn't you? I mean, they're so dang cool, right? Look at the movies. That's what you want to emulate when you play a game. You want to feel super cool. You want to feel like Darth Maul.
There's a reason
or whatever.
The main characters are almost always Force users, or at least there are Force users around. There's a reason that Donnie Yen got stuck into Rogue One, even though it made no sense to have a Force user in there. Like, it's because that's a massive chunk of what Star Wars is.
And actually, what Star Wars Galaxies did is they said, you're right, we know that everybody's going to want to do this, so we have to dumb them way, way, way down so that your bounty hunter can go toe-to-toe.
We have to nerf the Jedi so that they're on par with all the other classes.
So that they're on par with your Imperial officer.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Really? Really?
If you do the Jedi right, you're pushing into Force Unleashed territory, which isn't going to be fun for anyone else in a multiplayer game.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. And if
and
you do
so
the wrong,
it's like, so I can understand why they did it from a gameplay perspective, but then it does lessen the fun of pretending to be a Jedi in this game.
Yes.
Right? And then your other option, of course, is to say, okay, well, we make the Jedi or Sith like they are in the movies, and no one is going to have any fun.
Well, which is what I think Galaxies ended up doing, is they went and said, oh, okay, the Jedi are a special class that you had to like play for a certain amount of time with other classes in order to unlock the Jedi.
Yeah.
They tried to nerf it that way by saying, oh, you just have to earn your way there, but then it's like tons of people pissed off because they lost their Jedi characters, or you had people that...
So it was, and a lot of what that conversation was, Ross kind of talked about, it's like, well, here's the balance then. Mm-hmm. You balance it in this way, and it becomes unbalanced over here, or you make it realistic and it unbalances everything, and so it's a problem, just because lightsabers in the movies, they are so powerful, as are the heroes and villains wielding them. But that's also why they're primary protagonists and primary antagonists, right? These are the biggest, the baddest people around on either side, so you get the coolest, flashiest weapons. And it's okay because you're going toe-to-toe with other big bads. But even as we see like in the prequels, the second a lightsaber wielding person goes up against a non-big bad, like your B1 battle droids, well, they go through them like hot butter, or like, you know, a hot knife through butter, or whatever, and it's just, it's over. No, it's no nothing.
So now we've talked about player versus player, player versus enemy sort of combat, and the challenges and things there. The other thing that games are, of course, also known to do is make environmental puzzles and things that, of course, people find engaging. But the lightsaber also ruins this as well.
A lot of it.
Yeah.
Well,
You can still have jumps that would be difficult and
true.
stuff.
That is true. That's the only exception.
Yeah.
But as far as like, if you have a quote unquote maze in a game, why don't you just cut through a wall with a lightsaber?
Yeah.
You know, which this is also.
Oh, we have to, fix this puzzle to open this door.
Yeah.
Or I'll use my skeleton key.
Yes.
It's called a lightsaber.
The movies have also had this complaint as well, though. Now, I'm sure there is some sort of best practices in lore explanation, like why does Qui-Gon insist on going through this blast door when the wall right next to him could have been another viable option? Maybe Jedi have lost hands when things blow up.
Yeah, man, who knows what you're going to cut into?
Yeah.
That makes sense, though, still cutting through the blast door, because it's still probably less work than cutting through a thicker wall.
Maybe.
Even if, because doors on, castles, boats, whatever, like, doors are your weak point.
Yeah.
Even if the door is reinforced, it's still the weakest point, usually, So it's like, okay, I can see that. And I can see why maybe, because, like, you can't cut through walls and stuff as easily as, like, battle droids, right? So it's like, okay, so I can see where sometimes it may still be faster to run through the hall, even if the hall's a little bit longer than cutting through the wall, because you don't have to stop.
Mm-hmm.
You can just keep running it. So it's like, there are some times where I can see that, but then there are other times where it's kind of like, okay. Yeah. Like in episode 3 when Anakin and Obi-Wan get trapped in the ray shields. Well, there's a convenient floor located directly beneath you guys that is susceptible to lightsabers.
Yes.
Why are you still trapped?
Yep. Exactly. And that's the thing, is I'm sure, like, you don't see Jedi doing that all the time, because maybe, what if you hit a plasma vent or something underneath you and you incinerate yourself? So, I mean, it's a dire need situation. But
this is a problem with storytelling in general. It's like the more powerful you make your characters, the more difficult it is to A, keep track of all the powers they've got, and B, come up with realistic problems that aren't being increasingly
that's why I don't
time.
like Superman, is because it's like, how does this man have any challenges in his life ever? Like, how is it possible that he has villains with all the powers
it's less the problem of you can't come up with a challenge, as you cannot keep coming up with challenges for him over time.
Yes,
like they're going to become very repetitive, very quickly.
But that's what I'm saying is, like, Superman's been out for 50 years.
Exactly.
And he keeps acquiring new powers, every so often. So it's like, literally though, that's why now his greatest weakness is his feeling left out and not alone. Feeling like, oh, nobody likes me because I'm not human. How do I fit in? That's his greatest challenge.
Well, and most of his best stories are focused around him dealing with things that you can't punch. Like, it's like, okay, racism. Well, can't punch that away.
Yeah.
Much as some people would like to imagine we can.
Yep. Exactly. But it's any DM is familiar with this problem, though. Anyone who's led a tabletop role playing game and knows the feeling of like, oh, okay, I've got to come up with a challenge for that. Oh, wait, I forgot. He got that ability now, so that won't actually change. Okay, well, but that player has this ability, so that wouldn't work. How can I adjust this so that it'll actually work for all of them? And then you get there, and you're like, aha, I've got it all built, and someone's like, oh, I'll just cast this spell, and you go, it doesn't work. What? Why not? It's like, who knows? Something's going on in this room. I hate all of you.
You've never done that, Chris, right?
I feel personally attacked by that statement.
Never have I ever done that to you guys, ever.
That's right.
In the last... Wait, when was the
Was
party?
that 2 weeks ago?
No, in the last 2 weeks.
The only other thought that I can have as far as like why you go through a door instead of a wall is because what if the wall is too thick? And so it might take too much time to go through, because you're going to have to cut out chunks at a time that you can get through, right?
Yeah.
Whereas with the door, you're going to stick all the way through it, and you can just go around.
In theory, you could cut through a wall as deep as your lightsaber.
Right.
In one go.
Right.
So if your wall's any thicker than that, because spoiler alert for next week, we're going to talk about the Clone Wars. I was watching some Clone Wars episodes, and they have to cut through a fairly thick wall, which is pretty thick, and then they just use the Force to just pull out the slice that they cut.
Well,
so
you
like,
can see there is
theory,
some resistance, like we see when Obi-Wan's cutting through the initial blast, or there is, it's not an instantaneous zoop.
Yeah, exactly.
He does have to drag it through the door, but yeah, it shouldn't be any hindrance if you're like.
But I will say, why did Qui-Gon decide to go with just straight up melting it instead of continuing to cut that loop that he was cutting with the blast
I'm
doors?
thinking with a thicker door that just puts even more weight on how much you have to push against. I guess it makes sense. I guess, but
yeah, that makes sense. I
Also,
would have taken
it
less
looks
effort. Yeah, it did look freaking
really
cool.
really cool, man.
Yeah.
And we got some nice close-ups of Liam Neeson's face, which is frankly all the justification I need.
That's a good point.
Kyler, I think we need to talk to your wife.
She'll agree with me. Liam Neeson's a handsome fellow.
So we've talked about sort of like the realistic like situational challenges of lightsabers. There are also technical limitations as well. So, actually, and it's funny because they've talked about similar things with Star Citizen and breaching ships, breaching ship hulls. You can't just let players breach anywhere because the technology isn't really there yet for games.
Because we can't model the effects of any random place getting cut into.
Right. Now, there are some of the better engines do allow for dynamic mesh splitting and cutting, but
yes, those are words I know.
Okay. So the mesh is the 3D object, right?
Okay.
The thing. Dynamic means just
Reactive
wherever.
to you, yeah.
Yeah. So there are some of the engines are allowing and can do the math and all of that. That'll allow you to kind of cut a mesh wherever and like get into a hallway from the other side of a wall. The problem is that it doesn't look good. And also it's very resource intensive. So while the technology is there, no one's machines can really run.
Yeah.
Right. So
You listeners are so lucky to have me on the show because I'm not very bright, so then I have to ask Ross to clarify things.
And
like
you know
this.
what? I meant to say that before we started. Is I'm just going to go, and so you guys stop.
Well,
me.
and then too, when it comes apart, you got to deal with debris that's
Mm-hmm.
suddenly going to be sitting there. Like if you cut down a building as you're running through a city,
Then the game needs to generate
then the game needs
fallen
to
building
figure out that
debris.
how is that going to react with stuff
Yeah.
around it? Where do these pieces of debris go? How does it break
Basically,
down as
we
it
can
falls?
do it. We're just not there yet.
If you're on a ship and you
it'll
put
be
a wide
done.
enough gash in the wall, is that going to cause the entire area to depressurize and explosively? Are we going to burst out through the wall?
And actually, I'm even thinking just now, even Fortnite, where they do kind of give you the option of taking down buildings. If you take down like the lowest level, so there's nothing above, everything just disappears. And they do have little explosions to kind of give you a reason why it's not all crashing down around you. But you don't actually get the debris. It just all disappears above you.
Well,
So-
and there have been some games that have tried to do fully destructive environments, but even then it's generally just like, oh, you shot enough holes through this building that it collapses into dust. Like it's not literally, it's chunks that are, when viewed from far away, just look like dust. It's a pile now. And it's not... It's fun. It did make for, some of those make for some
And
fun
it's a
things
step
where it's
in the
like,
right
I'm just going
direction,
to
but
destroy
they're not
this
there
entire
yet.
arena.
Yeah.
But it's not quite
Yeah.
what you're looking for there. And you also, with having destructive environments, you run into the problem of the reasoning for why your average people walking around in the Star Wars galaxy don't wield lightsabers is because they are massively destructive and it is insanely easy to destroy things by accident. Go play Jedi Outcast or one of those where they do, they have the animation of the sparks. If your lightsaber contacts something, it'll put a glowing line in the wall. Just play that and pay attention to how often you accidentally gash the wall.
Yeah.
Now
All
put
the time.
realistic physics into that, where chunks are falling off on top of you, holes are appearing in the side of ships,
And your children are running underfoot.
yeah, everybody is everything. You're gonna die. Like you're gonna accidentally kill yourself or whoever you're escorting or whatever. And if we're making them realistic, then we humans who are playing these Jedi characters are way too clumsy to actually manage them.
Yeah. So, and actually, you're kind of touching on, at least with Jedi Outcast and Jedi, touching on where I was going to move next. Because we've talked about some of the design challenges. Now, the other big challenge, which I'm sure was more the issue, is more the content challenges.
Rating, yes. We call this the Wolverine's Claws problem.
Ooh, I have not heard that one before.
That's what I like to call it. But it's if you go back and watch the X-Men animated series that all the 90s kids watched and loved except for me, apparently. And
You didn't like it?
Oh, I just didn't watch it.
Oh,
It's not
okay.
that I disliked it.
It was good.
I watched the Spider-Man one.
That was also
I did
good.
never got around to X-Men, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's too bad.
Everybody's always talking about it so nostalgically, and I'm like, right, I remember that existed.
Yeah.
Cool, okay. But anyway,
I've
if you
watched
actually do
that,
watch
and then
it,
Spider-Man, and then Batman and Gargoyles. Those
if
good
you
times.
actually do watch it, you've got Wolverine walking around with these insanely sharp claws that pop out of his fists, and he never causes any bloodshed ever.
Yep.
It's literally the only thing he's really genuinely good for, and he never does
Never
it.
once.
And the same thing in most video games where you have Wolverine. He just doesn't ever slice things up because these are from comic books that were created for kids. And no matter how much you want to argue with that, originally comic books are largely modern comic books are largely targeted at children.
And don't
All
be
these
offended.
characters are
So is
beloved
Star
by
Wars.
children.
We're
Yeah.
adults. We
Star
love it.
Wars
It's
is
fine.
a name aimed initially not exclusively at children, but we want to keep it children friendly.
Yeah.
And if you make Wolverine's claws or a lightsaber as deadly as they should be, then it's going to get pretty nasty pretty quick, even with the lightsaber cauterizing blood.
So, as far as violence and contents, dismemberment is the big issue here
Yes.
with the lightsaber. Now, if you'll remember and think back to Jedi Outcast and Academy, I don't know if Academy did, but dismemberment was a thing, but it was very, very limited. You would occasionally cut off hands and arms, I believe.
Yeah, and
arms
heads
as well, and heads. There was a cheat code that did give you, or I guess it was a mod, not a code.
No, it was a cheat code.
Was it?
Yep, because
Oh.
I never downloaded mods, but I have.
Okay. But there was a full dismemberment cheat code where anywhere your lightsaber touched on another enemy character, it
It would
would
just
actually
fall
cut
off.
them.
That limb would fall off. Yes.
Well, and
That's
I even remember
fantastic.
there was you could cut people in half as well.
Yes. Well,
through the middle.
they basically had a ton of joints or spots on the body that would break, and if you hit close to one, that's where it would break. So it wouldn't actually cut exactly where your lightsaber hit necessarily.
I think there must have been a mod. I must have done a mod because
Maybe
I
you
remember
did,
one that
because-
was definitely
Yeah.
where your lightsaber.
But
was
it's
touching.
the
But
cheat
anyway.
code that you could put in. It would basically be like, I'm going to swing at them a couple times, and now I have a pile of body parts.
Yeah. So
A pile of stormtrooper armor parts.
So my comment before about the dynamically splitting things, that has been a thing, and as far as like enemy characters go, that's not as big of a problem because they're just not as intense as far as what the remains you would have behind would be. Splitting something in half isn't as big a deal as like cutting a hole in something. The problem is that just gets real dark real fast with the blood turn.
I love it.
I can't remember.
Which is
So we can
why
talk about that.
when Lucas sat down to make some new movies and he was going to have several Jedi running around cutting things up left and right, he went, how about we make all the baddies droids?
Mm-hmm.
And because it's less graphic that way,
Yeah.
and so he could have the Jedi use their lightsabers to fullish extent without it being too bad for kiddies.
Yeah. The
Which
only
that
thing
movie was very much geared towards.
The only thing with dismemberment that I want to see more of is the stupid AT-ST encounter that you always have in every Star Wars game. You know, I mean, I've got a lightsaber, I've got a very thin chicken walker leg sitting next to me. Why can't I just make a quick cut here and just
Yep.
be done?
Yeah.
Because those fights always take way too long. Just stop
Yep.
them.
When I'd encounter those in Jedi Outcast, it was just, I'm going to stand here and toss your explosives
Yeah,
back
the
at
rockets
you
back, yeah.
until you're dead.
Yep. Yeah, and that's what it would become. Because also, was it Jedi Academy that would, or Outcast, that if you got too close, they would stomp on the
Yeah.
ground? Yeah.
Yeah, they'd stomp you.
And it was just anyway. So content. Now, we all know that movies that are rated lower, more for kids, do sell better.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
The games have the same phenomenon. The problem is that the game rating system does not line up with the movie rating system.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's sketchy.
An M rating can be anywhere from PG to like a very hard R. It can be
Yeah.
that entire gamut of things. That we don't get as much of a hit with that with M ratings because it can be it might be rated M, but it might not be bad compared to it. Tangential media off things usually by requirement follows the same content guidelines as the parent media. So Star Wars games don't have as many dismemberments other than hands and a couple of heads because that's what the movies had.
Yep.
Right? There is also something to be said about tone. not only do you want to match tones with tangential media, but some of these dismemberments and things don't match with the tone of the rest of the adventure. Because if you are mowing through stormtroopers like they were battle droids and have all of the bits and pieces, you get such joy out of that. Man, just wait till my last comments.
I'm so excited.
To go through stormtroopers or people or humanoids of any sort like they were battle droids would either be sickly, darkly humorous. Like, I mean, it would be like one of the Lego games, but more realistic. You know how they just kind of, the Lego people just kind of pop apart. Or it would just absolutely be gratuitously violent and wouldn't fit within Star Wars. I even think of scenes like, you have Jabba's sail barge. Luke is on top of that sail barge with only his lightsaber, and yet we don't get... I don't think we have a single dismemberment in that scene, as far as I know.
We get people slashed and they Wilhelm scream off the side, but no
actual dismemberments.
No visual dismemberments.
When they very much should.
Sadly.
And this is where I'm saying that even movies disagree with the lore that we've been given, right?
Or, I mean, like, Kylo Ren hacking Finn up the back.
Yeah.
Like, you look at that again, it's like, okay, if that were an actual sword catching and dragging in his flesh, that would make sense. It should not be catching and dragging in his flesh like that. Which means either Kylo Ren took extremely great care not to simply bisect Finn right there, or we're cheating.
Yeah, exactly. There is also Disney content requirements. Now, a lot of this comes from a quote that we've gotten actually from someone from the Clone Wars TV series. One of their animators made a comment. Her name was Tatiana Carvin. She says, one of the rules we were given was always to hide the cut in case of decapitation. And never show blood. The burn of the lightsaber is supposed to cauterize it instantly. So this says a couple things to me. First off, obviously Disney doesn't want, again, the huge content warning. But also, as far as blood goes, they are respecting...
But that's talking about the Clone Wars, so this is even before Disney. So this is a directive from Lucas.
Yeah.
No, well, this was... well, actually, that's right.
Clone Wars, but they did do this before.
Yeah,
like
right.
we only get one lightsaber dismemberment or wound at all in the entire series that actually draws blood, and that's Obi-Wan hacking the dude's arm up in the
which they went back and corrected in one of the other editions,
which they changed in one of the editions.
I think did they also bring it back in a subsequent edition? Because I know that one's gone back and
it's
forth.
still in the one I've got.
Is it?
Yeah, it's in the one I have.
And that is not the original by any means.
Yeah. So now, yes, those are guidelines by Disney or Lucasfilm or whoever it was. Because they are the same. Because we talked about in one of our previous episodes how Disney doesn't allow decapitations, but then we see. Oh, because I thought it was funny because Thanos makes that comment of you should have gone for the head, but Disney doesn't allow that. But then in the next movie we do see him take his head off. So I think Disney isn't as worried about it in some of these other more adult focused medias. I'll almost guarantee you this was never even a question coming from Respawn as far as content goes. It was never a question in their minds as a studio that they were going to have those dismemberments or not. I'll almost guarantee you that just wasn't. Partially because looking at Titanfall 2, their previous game, doesn't do these sorts of dismemberments, even though they very well could. The closest I could find is there are a couple of times when one of the big Titans will like step on a dude, and you get this puff of a cloud of a red cloud, and you get some chunks flying off in a couple of different directions. But even that is above what we've seen so far from last Fallen Order.
Well, and this is all just lightsabers, not even getting into other Force powers' destructive capabilities. Like when you've got Force Unleashed walking around and you're crumpling an AT-ST into a ball.
Yeah.
Well, there's no reason you couldn't do that to a person too, theoretically.
Yeah.
So.
Except that the content gods of the universe will not allow it.
And we just like to casually forget that there are two pilots in those ATs.
Yeah.
By the way. So.
I didn't forget. I imagined it every time.
We're getting close. We're getting close to my comments. So, I find it funny that this conversation has really drummed up around lightsabers, because this is a problem that is not unique to lightsabers in games. Literally, every single game ever made with any sort of melee combat has done it this exact
Doesn't even
same
have
way.
to be melee. I mean, the Arkham Asylum games, Batman throwing these sharp batarangs that conveniently clunk baddies on the head and they fall unconscious.
Well, they can both knock out a person plus cut steel cables that he was using to string people up with, you know?
Yep, and we're also going to conveniently ignore the fact that even if they were somehow able to magically become dull and knock someone out, that could also very likely be fatal.
Well, and
Especially if you then take the person and string them up.
even a dull object, if thrown hard enough,
Yeah, exactly.
can still puncture.
It
So.
becomes a bludgeoning weapon instead of a slicing one. So,
Well, you think about like a bullet. A bullet is not sharp.
yeah, that's true.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's the force behind it that.
And we all
pushes it
know
through
that Bruce
anyway.
Wayne can totally throw one of those as hard as a bullet.
That's right.
Well, no, but that's what I'm saying about the
No,
battering.
yeah, but no,
like,
yeah.
Even if like we hand wave away the fact that it's sharp enough to cut steel cables.
It's
Like,
still
even if
not
it's still
that dull by any means.
Yeah, exactly.
You can
And
totally
as
embed
hard
that
as
in
he's
an eye
throwing it,
easily.
it's
Yeah.
going to break the skin anyway.
Yeah.
Like even if it is dull.
But also even with other more medieval style games, or actually, well, even bulleted weapon games, it takes you a lot longer to kill someone in a game with a gun than it would in real life,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Again, it comes down to making it fair and fun for both players, and you just can't make these things as realistic as what they should be, or what you would
Well,
think
and
they should be.
content speaking, also, that would get into some pretty nasty territory pretty quick, and does in some games. But
Yeah, absolutely. So really what I think it boils down to is that it's just a few vocal people wanting more violence in the Star Wars brand than what Disney or Respawn or anyone is willing to give.
so far,
So far.
Yep.
And I don't know.
There's
I don't
very
know
little
if...
they won't do for money, so give it enough time. Well, and also the games, like, you look at the first Star Wars games, they're about as vanilla and happy and child-friendly as you can get. Now look at, every year the games get more dark, more adult, more mature.
the series grows up. There's a whole lot. We'll discuss this in that maturity episode we're going to do in a while. But yeah, the people get older. They want their games to mature with them, and for some people that means growing more violent.
But I'm not sure...
Not sure that
holds-
Disney will actually cave to that.
Well, but I'm not sure that also entirely holds true across the full life cycle of something. Because as far as actual content goes... Fallen Order is still in line with the content that was in
I
something
know.
like, well, hold on, let me finish. As far as like dismemberments and things like that, the violence still holds the same. I mean, it's on the same level as what the original like Dark Forces was. In fact, and they were never as bad as what Doom was back in the day. Doom or
Not nearly as gishy.
Those. Yeah. So I mean, I think that is true to a point, as far as like people growing up with their favorite IP. But once you've kind of reached an adult audience, I don't think it really changes much after that. At least that's not what we've seen with the Star Wars games.
But I could argue that we have seen it with Marvel and DC Comics.
Well, but again, people were young when they started off with those, and then it matured with them, and it has now reached. I feel
See,
it's
but
kind of
every
pinnacle.
year you have kids that are growing up and are no longer kids and are now adults. Every year, the adult category of fans for your thing is getting bigger every year.
But those same things are still also catering to those young kids.
Yeah,
And so you have to strike
not
that
all of them.
balance.
Yes.
That's the thing. So,
Well-
like with DC Comics, for instance, we have their Black Label that they started up recently. These are basically rated R comics starring characters that 10 years ago they would never have put into these. The first DC Black Label entry was famous for showing a full frontal nudity of Bruce Wayne. For no reason. Like it didn't need to happen. It wasn't even serving a good story purpose. It was just, yeah, he's naked in the scene and we're not going to hide it. But that is a thing that a decade or two ago, DC doing that with their iconic, one of their
with
most
Batman,
iconic characters
that is
would have
true.
been unheard of. Now, they're not doing it just everywhere, obviously, but they did create a line of comics that is explicitly for more mature audiences. It's more graphic, it's rated R. And we've already got Deadpool pushing for this in Marvel Comics, and we've got other comics that are delving into that area, and then Deadpool making his way to the screen, and so many fans being like, no, he has to be rated R. Even though I would personally argue that, like, half of his best comics aren't rated R. Like, but whatevs.
See, and I think about it like this, even with Star Wars games, right? Episode 9 is coming out. They've already announced that they're going to have an Episode 9 Star Wars Lego game. Okay, fine. And that's awesome. And some adults are excited for it, particularly ones that were kids 10 years ago that grew up with the Lego Star Wars games.
Yep.
But it's like my kids, that's the target audience for a Lego Star Wars game. And that's awesome. And I'm glad that they're putting content out for that age group. But in 10 years, my kids are not going to be the target audience for that. They're going to join the adult fan base of Star Wars. And in 10 years, I'll be in my 40s and I'll still be in the adult fan base. You see what I'm saying?
Well, and two, it's a thing of my son is going to see Anakin Skywalker slaughtering younglings at a younger age than I did.
Yeah.
And I'm working to make sure that he has a healthy understanding of what is and is not appropriate and everything. But there are a lot of parents out there that don't.
Yeah.
I mean, I work in the library. I see what kids are checking out all the time. And especially when it comes to stuff like comics and genre fiction with science fiction and fantasy, there are a whole lot of adults out there that just don't concern themselves with it. It's like, it's a comic, whatever, get what you want. And so I'm watching 12-year-old boys checking out Watchmen, and I'm going, oh god, no. What? No. Don't. What is this?
Do your parents know?
Do your parents know what you're getting into here?
Yeah.
Or, you know, their browser. We've got a section that's specifically mature adult comics, but we can't police that. Like, it's not something we can, if the parents aren't paying attention to what their kids are reading, well.
Yeah. But I guess another way to say what I was saying is that, like, you will be in the adult fan of Star Wars category longer than you will be in the child fan of Star Wars category. Yeah. And so that demand for more adult, more mature things is going to increase at a more rapid rate than it does for children.
And seeing something like the Black line of comics, I could see. But again, that's still its own separate thing. Yeah. And it's not making it into the main
well,
line.
and I'm not saying
not making it in yet.
Yeah, and I'm not going to say whether we're going to see Mortal Kombat fatalities in a Star Wars game anytime soon, if ever. But, you know, it's distinctly possible that someone will make a game that just pushes that envelope slightly further. That becomes the new norm, and then someone else makes ones that
also
pushes it slightly further. And every time there is going to be a part of the fan base that's going, yes, this is what I've wanted. And as long as there's enough of them to vote well with their wallets, that trend is going to continue.
With Chris's comic thing, comics, that is the main medium, right? For Batman, for Superman, like that's the original medium of this character. And with Star Wars, it's the movies, and we have seen the movies get darker, which means other things then are going to follow, since the original medium, you know, the main product line is going in that direction. Sooner or later, everything else will follow.
Well, but like this Black series of comics, that's not like the main Batman story. That's not what would be considered.
No, but
not
it's
at
still
all.
a comic.
But
though.
it's getting made.
Yeah,
that's the point.
Well, but I think that follows more of a like what we see on the internet these days, where the internet's not really a scary place as what it used to be, because now people have landed in spots that all of whatever inappropriate content you want to talk about, it all has a place to live, and now you can successfully avoid those, right?
You can, but that a lot of
do
people
you?
don't.
Yeah, but I think that's what they're getting at, like with the Black line. So if you want a more adult, if you want, you know, naked Batman,
if you want full frontal nudity Batman.
But again, I would also take Scott Snyder's Batman from Batman v Superman versus any other Batman we've seen throughout the entire series of Batman movies. He's more violent than he used to be. He's branding people with a bat brand, and I was going to say we all, but most of us did not like it. But I mean, so even when he's not doing that, that excellently choreographed fight scene of Batman getting into the warehouse to save Martha, at the end,
Martha,
was very it was like skull splatter hitting the wall and splattering blood violent, and that was the main DC line of Batman of DC Universe continuity. Right? That, like, I'm just saying that there is always going to be, whether or not we're restraining it, whether or not we're still producing content for kids, because there's tons of Batman content for kids, the breadth of where we will go with this will continue to expand as long as there is an audience for that, and there will always be at least some audience for it, and that audience will probably increase.
Yeah.
So it's quite possible that we will see increased violence in Star Wars over time.
I just want full dismemberment, bloody gore, in a video game before I die. Is that too much to ask?
That brings me to my last point.
Probably not.
So, I found it interesting that people are so rabid and so public about their just wanted more violence in a Star Wars game. I found that odd. Okay. So I got talking to Carrie.
Crap. Now Carrie's gonna think ill of me.
She's gonna listen to this podcast anyway, so I mean...
I know.
I asked her... Oh, and by the way, Carrie is a licensed therapist. She is practicing.
I know. I'm afraid she's going to tell me we can't be friends anymore.
This is for everyone else so I can give
She's not.
context.
She's
behind
just
what I'm
she's
about to
just
say.
gonna she's just gonna take you aside and give you a talking to.
I know.
See the error of your ways.
Or she's going to be like, Ross, I don't want you hanging out with that Kyler boy
that's
anymore.
possible.
He's a bad influence on you.
Well, I mean, it's not like you've been walking around for years telling people straight up that you're a bad influence on them.
Yeah, that's true. I'm pretty sure I told Carrie that when you guys started dating.
Yeah.
Like, I've been a bad influence on Ross.
I'm pretty sure you've said that repeatedly in this podcast.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure too. So, I asked her if an obsession with violence was an indicator of greater mental problems.
Well, I'll see myself out.
She said, no.
Oh!
But a lack of empathy is.
Yeah.
And
Ooh,
an
have that
obsession with
checked off,
violence.
too.
An obsession with violence is an indicator of lack of empathy. So, like fear leading to anger, and anger leading to hate, and hate leading to suffering,
You're telling me I'm on the dark side, Ross?
violence obsession leads to a lack of empathy. Lack of empathy leads to one of several psychoses. So-
Wow. Why didn't we have Carrie on?
Oh, but we're going to when we do a diagnoses episode.
Oh yeah, that'll
do
be
it.
so much fun.
Yeah. And in fact, I mean,
Put
after
it-
we had this
put it on the
conversation,
It's on
we
the
already?
list.
Yeah, I was gonna say I thought it was. After we had this conversation, she also was like talking about Kylo Ren and his problems.
Oh,
Oh
So,
yeah, that was
that'll be fun.
Kate and I spent a while just yesterday actually talking about Kylo Ren and his problems and various ways to interpret what he's going on in there.
Yeah.
Oh, guys, listeners. Yeah, we're going to have some serious episode 9 build-up episodes here.
Oh, you want to do it that soon? Huh?
I think that'd be
Ooh,
awesome.
that's a
We
good
got
idea.
time.
I'll warn her beforehand.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
cool.
So, but yeah, the violence itself is not necessarily the problem. The problem is not being able to separate the reality and the non-reality,
Well-
or the desire for it to be real.
And respect other things as being living, and to respect life and pain and all of that.
Yeah.
So that's what it is that the violence shows a lack of empathy in that regard.
Yeah.
So and she'll have to give you more details on that particular point because I'm just an artist. What do I? So, but yeah,
Hopefully you know how to make something bloody look really cool. I'm just kidding. I've seen your art.
yeah, I'm pretty PC. I mean, as far as like being here from middle of Utah where the deer hunt is a huge thing every year.
Yeah.
Walking around and like driving around with wanting to put blinders on so I didn't have to look in people's garages with
Okay, come October, Ross, I'm going to have you over. We're going to confront your fears.
no, that yours was one of the garages that I avoided.
I'll let you cut the antlers off. You can get into the brains.
No, that's fine. That's no need to go there. But, so that's what I have. Those are my thoughts on why sabers are underpowered. Read
I
and
thought
why
that
that's
was
not
fantastic.
likely to change a lot in the future, at least in the immediate
Yeah.
future. Yeah.
Yeah, just because of the mechanics of the game, like we talked about
Well,
earlier.
yeah,
It's
just from a design standpoint, from a hardware standpoint, and from a moral standpoint, there's all sorts of
Yeah.
differences.
right now there really is no good reason to do it unless you're doing some sort of absolutely off the cuff, off the rails, uber violent thing that will make all of the journalists complain and all of your mothers not buy you stuff.
Star Wars hatred.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Don't get
Sounds
excited.
like a Sith movie. I'd watch
Okay,
that.
yeah, but do you reckon the hatred, the video game, that it was?
You could
yeah,
do
never
an
mind.
entire series of Sith movies. Like the fear leads to anger. So
Oh yeah,
like
that'll
Star
be a thing
Wars,
they do eventually. Yeah.
colon,
Why
fear.
wasn't that your pitch
Dang
last
it!
time?
Okay,
Man.
I'll save that for the next episode, the next pitch episode. Dang it!
Are we going to do a pitch episode about more trilogies, or are we going to do single? Or I mean, obviously we've got to pitch Star Wars video games at some point.
Well, yeah.
No, because I was going to do like Star Wars TV shows tonight as well.
But you know how interesting that would be as a game to actually
So
like.
cool.
So I really like games that really get into like moral choices.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And a game that pushes you towards the negative choice.
I like
to-
a game that
be
gets into
terrible.
moral choices and actually does something with it instead of just being like, oh, you're gonna go down, you're gonna have the exact same plot. It's just whether or not you're the good guy or the bad guy doing it, and that's meh.
Yeah.
That gets old, but
Well, but that's also again there are technical.
oh yeah,
limitations to
exactly.
it,
I know
so-
why it happens. It makes sense, but when that happens, I'm usually like, you're faking. You're giving me a fake choice. It's like when I get a dialogue choice and then I play the game again and discover that if I choose the other dialogue choice, I get the exact same response. It's like, you lied to me.
Yeah. It's the illusion of choice.
Yep.
Wait, is that a thing we've talked about here? Was that a conversation?
The illusion of
someone else?
choice.
I know we've talked about it. I don't know if we've
Have
talked
we?
about it
Maybe
on
that's
the
what I'm
podcast.
asking. Yeah.
Stephen will let us know.
Yeah.
Yeah. You didn't know what you were getting yourself into, Steven. Signing up to be our fact checker.
Yep.
So, yeah, I don't have anything to add. I think that was a pretty thorough covering of the topic, Ross.
I try to be thorough.
Good job.
As much as, I mean, who knows if this will be boring to listen to. I know Kelsey's going to hate it.
I know I had
sorry,
fun talking
Kelsey.
about it. So.
She probably won't even get this far into the episode to even hear. So.
So that means we can say whatever we want about her now.
Yeah.
So all the rest of you listening, don't tell her and see if she responds onto the Facebook or something.
That's a good idea.
That's a fun experiment.
That's fun. Okay, you all heard it. Those are the rules. Play along.
Yep.
Be cool. Alrighty. And, yeah, you can follow us on Twitter at More Civilized. Please come talk to me there. And you can also join our Facebook group, A More Civilized Podcast. There's some good discussion happening. Interesting discussion happening recently.
Speaking of this week's shout out, I might, pander to my fan base a little bit in this shout out. I would like to extend a very special thanks to Mr. John Smith for creating the poll as to the level of who's in favor of or not in favor of the newsiest news. And all of you have done a very good thing in supporting me in the best intro I could have ever come up with.
Let's be honest.
Well, as of right now, there's only 2 that are not in favor. That's Kyler and Steven.
Oh, you voted too?
Yeah.
Oh, I did too, of course. Yeah.
I haven't voted, so there's 3 against it then.
3 against, currently 8 in favor.
All right, I need to rally the troops.
Or just figure out just how willing you are to pander to the audience.
Yeah, that's true.
But
Although, let's be honest, I think the audience enjoys hearing us argue about it more than they just enjoy the newsy news itself.
Yeah.
With my particular thanks to John, I'm going to have to extend a big thumbs down and a raspberry to my own sister.
Yeah! Lindsay, good job!
No, I mean, I think she has voted in favor of, but her comment was that she's conflicted. No! There's no conflict.
No, Lindsay, join the right side here. Take a stand
Which is
against
the
the
newsiest
newsiest
news
news.
side.
No, take a stand against it. Come on, Lindsay.
Anyway.
She's your sister. It's her job to disagree with you. Like,
or her job to agree.
No.
That's not my experience with sisters. Okay?
I'm her pseudo brother, so she's got to pick one.
I think that's a pretty easy choice. Obviously, she's going to pick me.
So, thank you very much, John, and less thanks to Lindsay, because if you want to talk to me...
Because he's your brother, and that's his job.
That's right. You can speak with me on Twitter at Mr_Ars.
Yep. Hop on Facebook and Twitter. Let us know if you have any topics you'd like to hear us cover. To do that.
And again, may the Force be with you.
Always.
I'm Anna Graves, and thank you for listening to a more civilized podcast.
Obviously, she's going to pick me.
I found that odd. Kyler's just realizing that the blanket I have to reduce noise is a Yoda blanket.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. That's why I use it.
Sorry to derail. I just was like, oh, it's Yoda. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Something's going on in this room. I hate all of you.
I'm just saying, you've got an awful lot of comments
and
about men.
All I'm saying, well,
There are
just
attractive men out there.
wait till February.